Yesterday, I talked about Puthojana, two kinds of Puthojana, worldly, the Buddha taught us. Anda Puthojana and Kalyana Puthojana. Anda Puthojana is a blind worldling. Kalyana Puthojana, noble worldling. Yesterday, I said, our yogis are not blind worldling because they are interested in the Dhamma, the teachings of the Buddha. They are interested, according to their interest, they practice the four foundations of mindfulness diligently. When they practice the four foundations of mindfulness diligently, they experience four elements, 5 aggregates, 12 sense bases, 7 factors of enlightenment, noble eightfold paths, all the Dhamma the Buddha taught, they experience. They may not know how they experience, how they understand these Dhamma by their mindfulness. That's why I try to explain how yogis understand the Dhamma. Only you have to check with your practice whether or not I have experienced this Dhamma. 4 elements. Yesterday I have explained how yogis experience. Most of the yogis, they describe in their report, they could know the rising falling closely, then they could feel motion, this and that. So today I will not repeat about elements. I will go ahead about khandhas, how yogis understand khandha. There are 5 khandhas: rupa khandha, vedana khandha, sanya khandha, sankhara khandha, vijnana khandha. Khandha means group or heap in English. Rupa khandha, the group of matter or corporeality. Vedana khandha, the group of feelings. Sanya khandha, the group of perception. Sankhara khandha, the group of mental formation. Vijnana khandha, the group of consciousness. We can read in a Dhamma book, we can study, but we might not feel unless we practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness. When you practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness, you have experienced, but you may not describe. This is Rupa Khandha, the group of corporeality. but you have experienced, even though you could not describe. When, as we are monk, since we were young, we studied Abhidhamma, we memorized the Abhidhamma, but we could not feel, we just memorized. We do not really understand. So when we practice meditation through experience, we understand more clearly what the Buddha taught. What the Buddha taught. So now our yogis practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness. The main object I have explained. Rising and falling of the abdomen. When you are able to note the rising and falling, in a single of the rising, there are 5 aggregates. If you could note falling, there are 5 aggregates in a single of the falling. If you really could note closely, that's why you must have the ability to note the rising and falling closely. If you could not note it closely, you would not understand what I am explaining now. That's why we yogis are always reminded to note closely with paying attention. Paying attention. So I will think our yogis are able to note the rising falling closely. Many yogis also have described how they could note the rising falling closely. So you note rising. Rising is a corporeality or metta. You note falling. The falling is a corporeality or metta. This is a group of metta or corporeality. Sometimes you could not note it closely, but you want to note it closely. You eager to note it closely as you are instructed. Your mind doesn't go to the object closely. When you know the rising, falling, you notice your mind goes away, thinking, wondering. So you are unable to know the rising, falling sometimes. So you don't feel happy, unhappy, so feeling unhappy. If you could note the rising, falling closely, you are satisfying with your noting, with your practice. Very closely, without thinking anything. Your mind is so concentrated on the abdomen. Note it very closely. At that time, you feel happy. You are satisfied with your practice. So, noting good or bad is Vedana, Vedana Khanda, the group of feeling. Rupa Khanda, the group of corporeality. Vedana Khanda, the group of feeling you have experienced. Then Sanya Khanda, to know the rising, it's rising, falling, it's falling. You have to know it's rising, it's falling. The mind must recognize it's rising, it's falling. So Sanya Khanda, the group of perception. The mind perceives it rising, it's falling. If you could note it closely. Then mental formation. We say according to our yogi's experience, to be able to note the rising, falling closely, I have repeated many times, paying attention. So paying attention is sankhara khana, ကြောင်းကြစိုက်တယ် ကြောင်းကြစိုက်ရသိအောင်လို့ To know its rising and falling, we must pay close attention. So paying attention is sankhara khanda, the group of mental formation. Very obvious. Noting is group of consciousness. So if you could note a single of rising, there are 5 aggregates. In the same way, if you could note falling, there are 5 aggregates. 5 aggregates. For me, it's very easy to explain. If you do not listen carefully, you may not catch what I say. So I would like to proceed other things, but I should explain some more. Don't think Sayadaw is repeating. I want yogis to understand clearly. To understand clearly. So you practice walking meditation. Right step, left step. Right step, left step. In a single step, there are also 5 aggregates. In a step, noting the group of consciousness. The footstep, right step or left step, is a group of matter or corporeality. Sometimes you could note very well. If you could follow the movement closely, you are happy. If you could not note footstep closely, you may not be happy, you may be disappointed. If you are ardent practitioner, you might be disappointed. Or disappointment, happy or unhappy, is a group of feelings. To know the footstep, it's right step and left step, you must know, the mind must perceive its right step, its left step. So, this is a group of perception. Paying attention is a group of what? The mental formation. So if you understand in the walking meditation, you understand everything. Because you have understood very well in the rising and falling in the footstep. So if you want to know more clearly in the bending, in the stretching, in the sitting down, in the getting up, all the activities, there are 5 aggregates. In the seeing, in the hearing, in the smelling, in the tasting, in the touching, in the thinking, there are 5 aggregates. In this way, yogis experience, understand 5 aggregates. So, some other time, when you meet your dhamma friends, spiritual friends, you may discuss about aggregates, khanda, that you have experienced. In this, because of this, you are noble worldling. You are not blind worldling, not anta puthojana. You are kalyana puthojana. Kalyana puthojana. So you understand. Then how you have experienced insight, knowledge. Yesterday, I explained how yogis understand mind and matter clearly. the knowledge of discerning mind and matter. Noting is a mind, the rising falling is a matter. Noting is a mind, the footstep is matter. There are nobody and the rising, no she, no he, no spirit, no soul. Have you seen anybody in the rising? No, you could not see anybody. So in this way, you have the right understanding, right view, samadhi. You get rid of wrong understanding, wrong view. So before we practice meditation, what do we think? We might think there is a soul in our body, a spirit in our body. This spirit ordered us to do something, to speak something, to think something. The soul. Now when I practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness, noting very carefully, I can't see anybody in the rising. I can't see anybody in the falling. Only noting in matter. Only mind and matter. So you have clear vision. You do not confuse. This is your experience. Is that true? If you really could see, you may say, yes, it is true. Because I am very mindful on my object. That's why I could see. If you could not see, not easy to understand. So I would think you have understood, because you are mindful each and every moment. So you understand mind and matter, you get rid of what? Micchadeti, wrong view, wrong understanding. Then you note, yesterday I also told, you understand cause and effect. When you are noting the rising falling, when the mindfulness is strong, you notice breathing. Because of the breathing, rising, falling appear. If there is no breathing, no rising, falling movement appear. At least you would understand. You know the rising, falling. Why you know the rising, falling? Because rising, falling movement appear. If there is no rising, falling, do you still note rising, falling? You do not note rising, falling. Because of the rising, falling, the mind note rising, falling. There are no rising and falling, the mind doesn't know the rising and falling. So you understand cause and effect. Yesterday I briefly explained. Then when you are noting the rising and falling, you would notice the warmness or heat somewhere in your body. You notice. When you know there is heat or cold, you note. Why you note heat or cold or warm? Because the warmness appear in your body. The cold appear in your body. Hardness appear in your body, you note hard. Softness appear in your body. The cohesion, the weather is quite hot. Cohesion may rise, you note cohesion. Sometimes fluidity, you note fluidity, saliva flowing, the tear coming out, sweating in your body, on your body, you note sweating. Why you note sweating? Because the weather hot, your body gets sweat, you note sweating. So in this way, you understand cause and effect. You don't need to say, I understand cause and effect. Cause and effect. So, what the Buddha taught? Rupa. The Buddha taught, Rupatiti, Rupa. ဖောက်ပြန်တတ်တယ်အပူအေးစသည်တို့ကြောင့်ဖောက်ပြန်တတ်တဲ့အတွက်ကြောင့် သူ့ကိုရုပ်လို့ခေါ်တယ်တဲ့ the form, how to say, the form of body is being changed by elements. Do we experience how our body change by elements? When the weather is very cold, early in the morning, we sneeze, running nose. Why? Because of the cold weather. Because of the air, very cold. So our body change. When the weather is very hot, when you have the high temperature in your body, you feel very hot. Your body becoming changed. You have the fever. You have headache because of the high fever. So in this way, we experience, is that true? Nobody make us to sick. Nobody make us to get warm because of the elements. Because of the cold, because of the air, our body change. So we experience. In this way, we can understand cause and effect. Then yogis, they note intention, especially when they practice walking meditation. Actually, not only in the walking meditation, you have to note intention. If you want to note intention, intending to lift, lifting, then pushing, placing. Mostly they practice when they note intention when they practice walking meditation. If you want to note intention, before you get up, you have intention, you must note intention. Before you sit down, you have intention, you must note intention. Before you speak, you have intention to speak, so you have to note intention. So you can note intention, so many things, not only in the walking meditation. But if we are very mindful, if we note it very closely, if our mindfulness is strong enough, powerful enough, we can notice there is intention. Even though we do not note intention purposely, we can be aware there is intention. When the mindfulness is very good. But yogis, they note intention. It doesn't matter, you can note intention. But you have to understand, when the mindfulness is very good, you can be aware of intention. So, what you understand? Cause and effect. Because of the intention, you move. Because of the intention, you lift. Because of the intention, you put forward. Because of the intention, you place it down. Because of the intention, you speak. Because of the intention, you bend. Because of the intention, you stretch. So you understand cause and effect. So if you really experience cause and effect, you also get rid of doubt. How you get rid of doubt? Nobody make to appear this manner, only the cause and effect. You understand clearly. So cause and effect. Just now I forgot to say, when we know the rising falling, the rising falling movement, sometimes yogis, they describe, I could not see the rising falling clearly. Some yogis say, I know the rising falling. When I know the rising falling slowly, gentle and subtle, I note it. Then when I note it, slowly the rising falling getting shallow, then I could not see the rising falling. I could not see the rising falling. The way they express is different. Some yogis just they say, oh, I cannot see the rising falling. Some yogis they could mention very closely, very clearly how they could not see the rising falling. So that's why if you are careful, if you are mindful, you could describe clearly. Then what we say, if you could not see the rising falling clearly, you don't need to force to be clear. Just let it be. Don't force. Don't take heavy breath. Let it be. But you have to understand whether or not you have strong mindfulness. Sometimes when our effort is weak, we cannot see the rising falling clearly. Our mind becomes cloudy, cannot see. When we have drowsiness, because our effort is not strong enough. So if so, you have to understand, you have to make effort. You have to put more energy, mental energy, to see the rising falling. If you think your mindfulness is very good, strong enough, not thinking much, then you can note the rising falling closely. Then you also notice the rising falling getting slower or gentle and smooth, then slowly finished. Then you cannot see the rising falling. In this case, you don't need to force. You don't need to force to be clear. You have to understand about this. Then you have to note sitting, touching. When you note rising, falling, you feel the movement. Motion, upward movement or downward movement. You feel. But when you note sitting, touching, what? You feel. When you note the rising, falling, you see it, movement. When you note the sitting, touching, you feel. I would say like this. To feel, let's say, when you notice sitting, in the sitting, you notice stiffness or hardness in your body, tightness in your body, upper body. When you note touching, there is pressure, you might feel, or hardness or softness. You cannot notice immediately. You have to build up your mindfulness. You have to build up your mindfulness. So when you say, I could know the rising, falling very clearly, then slowly the rising, falling becomes gentle and smooth, then disappear. Your mindfulness is very good. So when you notice sitting, touching, you can be aware of something immediately. You cannot take so long. You could describe something in the sitting and touching. In the sitting and touching. So, in this way, when you are noting rising, falling, or sitting, touching, or seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, thinking, you would notice. You would notice the permanent, impermanent, or changing, unsatisfactory, and not self. Not self. If the mind is so concentrated, if you have strong mindfulness, while you are noting the rising, falling, because you could see the rising, falling change one another. Change. When the rising movement ends, then falling appears. You note falling. Then falling, you note the falling also disappear. In this way, rising and falling change one another. Changing is impermanent. impermanent. So when you, just now I said, you note it closely, you notice the movement slowly vanish and getting weaker and weaker and smoother, then gentle. There are so many stages. You can catch the beginning of the rising, middle of the rising, end of the rising, you could catch. In the singing of the rising, there are so many changes. Noticing in this way a kind of thought, the knowledge would arise while you are noting mindfully, or the Buddha taught a nature, impermanent or changing. Now I have noticed there are changes in the rising, there are changes in the falling. So you note, your mind is concentrated, your mindfulness is very good, without thinking much. So noting it many, many times, you may feel you don't want to note. Something like boring. But you do not stop noting. You still note, you are still noting the rising falling, even though you get boring. So even though you don't say, this is the dukkha, seeing it, you feel dukkha. Because of the rising, so many times I note, if there is no rising falling, I don't need to note. While you are practicing, you may feel you get boring, but you do not stop. So in this way, you are thinking about nature, dukkha, and anatta. This is also insight knowledge. Insight knowledge. Then I have to say again, only I can say other things, but my main object is a rising falling. Just now I say without thinking. But we do not have the ability to know the rising falling or present object closely all the time. We also experience our mind went away, thinking, wondering, imagining, planning, remembering, sometimes criticizing. So we note all of them. I have to say again, note it. Note it closely when the thoughts arises. You should not follow the thoughts. We must not follow the thoughts. We must note it closely. If we follow the thoughts, our mind out of control. One day I have explained, when we see a sight, we must note it closely. If we do not note it closely, our mind is so sensitive, very fast, very quick. What Abhidhamma say, in a twinkle of an eye, the mind, the rise and fade away millions and millions of times. Millions and millions of times. If we are unable to notice seeing, kilesa will take over our mind. Am I right? Kilesa will take over our mind, Yes, see, let's say, because in the text, the opposite sex. It's better to tell a story. At the Buddha's time, there was a very beautiful lady in Rajagaha city. She was so beautiful. Also, she was very devoted to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. She offered food to the Sangha. When she offered food, also very delicious food she offered. So, the monks, they unexpectedly they talk about this lady because she was so devoted. So when they talk about her devotion, they also mentioned her beauty. So a young monk, just he heard about her, she haven't seen yet. She didn't see yet, but he fell in love with her. You see, he was not mindful. Just he heard, then he loved. He loved. When a young bhikkhu met her, she already died. So she also could not be mindful. He thought, now she died. If she was alive, she might have been more beautiful, he thought. So, what do you think in his mind? The kilesa occupied, overwhelming his mind. So, we must note seeing, seeing, seeing. If we do not note seeing, our mind catch the form, then thinking about how should I pronounce theme or theme? Theme. Who can learn how to pronounce theme? Theme. Okay, theme. You understand. Do not think about them in details. So, if we note seeing, there is no theme, there is no details. Oh, how is her, how to say, face? Oh, what about her nose? What about her ears and this and that? That's why in the text say, Nani made gahi, hoti nanu pinsene gahi. Nani made gahi, hoti nanu pinsene gahi. Do not think about the thing. Very difficult to pronounce. Very difficult to pronounce. Do not think of details. If you are mindful, you do not think of things and you do not think of details. If you are mindful, just what to say, seeing, data, madam, boisati, just seeing. Your mind doesn't go beyond that. So I have to tell again, because you can be mistaken. Note it closely, immediately. Don't follow the thoughts. Following the thoughts is not Citta-nupassana. Noting it closely is a Citta-nupassana, contemplation of the consciousness. So you note it very mindfully. You could note the rising, falling closely. You could note the right step, left step closely. So at the beginning, you could catch the beginning of the rising, middle of the rising, end of the rising, beginning of the falling, middle of the falling, end of the falling. So your mindfulness is getting better and better. You have strong mindfulness. When you have strong mindfulness, you could not catch the beginning. You could not catch the middle part of the rising. You could not catch the end of the rising. You may think, what happened? Now I could not note that. I could not catch the beginning, middle, end. What happened? My practice is good enough. But you could feel the movement. You could see. You could see the movement, but this movement changed rapidly, rising and fade away very quickly. You could see. That's why yogis, what they say, I could not see the form as before. I could not see the form, but I could feel the movement. I could not see the form, rising, falling. I could not, name as rising, falling. I could not label, but I could feel the movement. I could not catch beginning, middle, end. Yogis at the beginning of the experience, they may confuse. Meditation teacher say, don't worry, go ahead, note it. So your mindfulness is very good. Not only the rising and falling, your mind become open up. How your mind is open up? Not only the rising and falling. At the same time, you might notice there is warmness in your hand or somewhere in your body. Also, you may notice the stiffness somewhere in your body, itchy somewhere in your body. You would notice. Sometimes the crawling sensations on your body, you notice. So, whatever arises in your body, you could catch. Not only the rising and falling. Your mind power is very good. So, when you are noting the rising and falling, when there is itchiness, you note it. You are noting mind, catch it and note it. When you note it, you notice disappear. Then stiffness arises, you note, then it disappears. So in this way you think, oh, there are so many things to be noted. Not only the rising and falling, there are so many things on my body. Yogis, they experience when they are very mindful. They could see the rising, they could see very clearly on their body. So in this way, seeing or discerning on your body and mind, you would feel something. Oh, very disgusting. A lot of dukkha, suffering. So in this way, you would detach your body and mind. If you understand, have experienced, you may accept what I'm saying, what I'm talking. So I also would like to tell a story to understand clearly, briefly. At the Buddha's time, the king, very famous, King Kosala, very close to the Buddha, he had a queen called Manlika, very clever queen, but she was not born in a royal family. Before she became the queen, she sold the flowers. So King Kosala fell in love with her, so he married to the Manlika. So at her palace, King Kosala wanted to encourage Manlika, wanted to favor of her, because she was not born in a royal family. So King Kosala asked her, my dear, or my honey, I don't know how to say. She might call something. Tell me, to whom you love most? To whom you love most? Then Queen Manlika thought, the king hints me, saying that I love him very much, but I should not tell like this. I love myself most, but he wanted me to say I love him most. I should not tell lie. So she replied, I love myself most. So King Kosala didn't know what to do, because he expected she loved him very much, the most. True, we love ourselves most. We love. But just now, as I explained, when we are able to note the rising, when we see very clearly rising and fade away, and the rising and falling, there are so many things happening in the body, noting repeatedly, one after another, seeing it. Where is happiness, sukha, comfort in my body? I can't see any sukha in my body. Only I could see suffering, unpleasant feelings in my body. So we detach. We detach. Experiencing this knowledge. Our late most venerable Mazi Sayadaw give the example with a fisherman. A fisherman used bamboo trap to catch fish. So when he knew something in his bamboo trap, he thought it was fish. So he delighted. He was so happy because he thought he caught a fish. So he put his hand into the bamboo trap. Then he grabbed so tight because he don't want to let it go. So when he took it out, it was not a fish. It was poisonous snake. Before he saw, he thought fish. So he liked very much. When he saw it was not fish, he was so frightened because it was poisonous snake, dangerous. In the same way, when we really see there is no pleasure in our body, all the suffering changing one after another, we don't want our body. We don't want to be reborn again, because we have realized having born is the dukkha. So in this way you have experienced rising and fading away nature when you practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Only I explain with the rising falling. In the same way, in the stretching, in the bending, in the sitting down, in the getting up, in the right step and left step, in the seeing, in the hearing, in the smelling, in the tasting, touching, everything you understand clearly. In an object, if you understand very clearly, you understand everything. That is called your mind is open up. So this is the insight knowledge. We practice meditation here for 2 weeks. I cannot explain further because you practice only for 2 weeks. That's enough, I think. That's enough. If you want to listen more about insight knowledges, you have to practice more. Within 2 weeks, I think you may experience these kind of knowledges. 2 weeks not enough, actually. When I teach meditation in Blue Mountains in Australia, they arrange 10-day retreat. 10-day retreat, as you know, the mind just settle down, then retreat finish, go back to the normal life. Then you come back again. At the beginning you strive very hard. Your mind goes everywhere. You cannot concentrate your mind. Then after 2, 3 days, 5 days later, you have become your mind settled down. Just settle down your mind, retreat finish. So they ask me, when I talk about sometimes I have to explain, sometimes only just how do they understand, how do they experience cause and effect. I stopped. Any more? Yes, a lot. Please talk about it. I cannot, because you practice just 10 days. I want to encourage them to practice more. So I told committee members to arrange 1 month retreat. 1 month retreat. Now every year they arrange 1 month retreat. 1 month retreat. I also here cannot say for further insight knowledges because you practice only 2 weeks. Enough. Enough. Now I want to say something because it's very important. Very important. The Noble Eightfold Paths. Also, in the singing of the rising, there are Noble Eightfold Paths. In the falling, there are Noble Eightfold Paths. You have experienced what the Noble Eightfold Paths. You know very well. Samma Vaca, Samma Kammanta, Samma Ajiva, Sama Vayama, Sama Sati, Sama Samadhi, then Sama Deity, Sama Sankappa, Noble Eightfold Path. You have experienced, but you do not know how you have experienced. I have to tell you briefly now, 8 o'clock. In that second, before we practice meditation, the four foundations of mindfulness, what do? You take precepts. You have already got the sila, morality group, samavaja, the right speech. You don't say any other bad things. You tell the truth, right speech. Then samakamanda, right action, gentle movement. You are mindful when you practice meditation. Sama ajiva, right livelihood. You don't say any other things. Say the drugs or weapons or something like that. Then sama vayama, right effort. To be able to note the rising, falling closely, you have to make effort. Put forth effort, mental effort, to understand clearly as they really are. This is the right effort. Sama vayama. Sama sati, right mindfulness. Right mindfulness, you put. Then sama samadhi. When you develop right mindfulness, your mind is concentrated. So you have experienced this called concentration group. Sama vayama, right effort. Sama sati, right mindfulness. Then sama samadhi. Then sama deity and sama sankappa. Right understanding, I have already explained how you understand clearly, how you understand correctly, how you understand thoroughly. Right understanding. If we do not practice meditation, we think nature as nature, dukkha as sukha, impermanent. The Buddha taught through his experience. But we think happy, permanent. Dukkha, the Buddha taught, suffering, unsatisfactory. But we thought sukha. Even though we suffer, we don't think it's suffering. We don't think suffering. So when I talk about suffering, a story also arises in my mind. I will not talk about monkey mind. Monkey. The monkey wants to know dukkha because his master always mentioned dukkha, suffering. When he sit down, he mentioned dukkha, suffering. When he get up, he mentions dukkha, suffering. When he eat, he mentioned dukkha, suffering. So the monkey, hearing that, why my master always say dukkha? I want to know very much what the dukkha is. He want to know. But he also experienced dukkha, but he do not know it's dukkha. I will not tell today. So we think dukkha as sukha. We think not self, but we think self. We think self. So this is our mind. So if we practice meditation, if we really could note, we can clear this wrong understanding. But we have right understanding, samadhi. So you understand, just now I have explained. Then sama sankappa, right thinking. When you are noting right thinking, what arises? That is nature, dukkha, anatta. When you are noting impermanent or changing or unsatisfactory and not self. The other meaning is what our teacher explained, right aiming. Not right thinking. Right thinking, yes, one meaning. The right aiming is another meaning. How is the right aiming? To be able to note the rising and falling, you must direct your mind to the object. You must aim your mind to the object. present object. If you do not direct your mind to the object, you could not note. If you do not aim your mind to the object, you could not note closely. So this is called right aiming. Right aiming. You understand, but I want to tell an example. I think in this country they may play the dart. They play the dart. When they play the dart, they aim the arrow to the target. Then they let it go. So the arrow hit to the target because they aim very carefully. So when you know the present object, you must aim your mind to the object closely. Then you note. This is called samma sankappa, right aiming or right thinking. So you have experienced these Noble Eightfold Paths. Noble Eightfold Paths. I think that's enough for today. That's enough for today. So we have practiced for 2 weeks according to our effort, according to our mindfulness. Our yogis may have experienced what I have explained now. If you haven't experienced yet, do not stop. Go ahead. Go ahead. Come and practice meditation here. Then you will have some quality of knowledge. If you really have experienced, you may have some quality. Watching it, only you are noting the rising, falling closely, rising, falling, sitting, touching, and so on. But your mind is different. You have some other qualities. These qualities called, how to say, the Riyatana, Saddha. You have confidence or faith in the Buddha and his teachings and his noble disciple, Saddha. Then when you have this experience, your mind is so soft and your heart is so soft, then you want to keep precepts safely. Then you have Sila, Saddha Sila. You also have the Dhamma knowledge, Sutta. You don't mind giving up because when you are practicing meditation, sometimes a thought may arise. You really satisfied with your practice. You are very grateful to the teachings, to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. Then you want to support this and that. You might feel sometimes Saddha, devotion. So giving up, Saddha, Sila, Sutta, the Dhamma knowledge, Saga, giving up, Hiri, the moral shape. If you really experience, you don't want to do any unwholesome deeds. The moral, how to say, Ottappa. Ottappa, how to explain Ottappa? Chaulan. Moral dread. Moral dread. Moral shame and moral dread. You have. Then, Hiri, Ottappa. Saddha, Sila, Sutta, Saga, Panya, wisdom. You have wisdom. As you, according to your practice, just now I explained, these kind of things you have. So you just try to be mindful, but you have learned a lot. You have experienced a lot with your own practice. That's why I say do not stop. Go ahead. May you be well and happy. May you be able to practice meditation ardently and energetically. May you be able to continue your practice until you want to attain enlightenment. Then may you attain Nibbana.